Hello, happy middle of the week, Wednesday. Here we are with Live Inspired Stories of Inspiration and Transformation. And today I have Dr. Shane Harada, who is here visiting in my virtual studio. He is a chiropractor. He's a serial entrepreneur who's really has specialized in the network marketing industry. He is the creator of the Harada Method, and he is one of the most intellectually stimulating persons I've ever spoken to. Every time I talk to him, I feel smarter after I do. So I would like to welcome Dr. Shane Harada. Hello, Shane. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
So you have a really interesting life story, and it starts from a little bit of a rough beginning. And I'd love for you to let's just start off. Let's just jump in here.
Well, thank you. This is what's given me the ability to relate to so many people in our society, because just like most homes, very imperfect. My grandfather died actually an alcoholic, drinking a fifth of JD a day, cirrhosis of the liver. On the other side of my family, addictions and lots of other different things, and abuse, and so lots of challenge, lots of struggles growing up, which then obviously carrying that from elementary into high school, and low self-esteem and not feeling like you fit in, and all of those things really were touched my life and have given me the foundation to relate to other people and some of the things that they're going through, and how loss and grief and guilt and sadness and sorrow, all of those human experiences kind of fit together. And that gave me then the springboard to figure out that I wanted to be in healthcare.
Beautiful, Shane. Can I ask you another question? Because this is always fascinating to me, and that is, you see so many times things like these generational things, alcoholism, abuse, these things tend to just keep perpetuating generationally. So yes. How did you break that cycle? You went into healthcare, but what was the journey of choosing healthcare and breaking this cycle that was apparently generational?
Absolutely generational. I saw it in both of my parents' families. My mother and I had many, many discussions growing up. She actually, when I graduated high school, then she graduated with her GED. When I graduated chiropractic school, she was graduating with her master's. And so her interests were always in developing this as well, and social work. So she got her degree in social work and counseling. So we had many intellectual discussions while I was growing up. Always have had a great relationship. But that's what gave me some of the psychological understandings to some of the underpinnings of the codependent relationships and the emotional, physical, mental connection. And then that really was the foundation to start in understanding. Growing up in religion and Christianity also gave some foundation for Christ and the miracles of Christ and how all of that plays. So the spiritual connections and the universal laws of how everything spiritually manifested first and then physically second. And that's really then the foundation of where I was going through chiropractic school and figuring that out, trying to understand and fleshing that out while he was even going through academic educational system, even through physics, through chemistry, organic chemistry, gross anatomy, all of those basic sciences, and trying then to bring that into, well, how does that weave into spiritually first and physically second?
And that's kind of the basis of everything you do. Spirit first, physical second. Is that correct?
Foundation for everything in this planet, every form, even thought form.
Very cool. And what made you decide to go to chiropractic school? You had a decision to make there.
So that was, as you also wanted me to touch on how that abuse cycle was transformed, that was also personal experience, because through that, coming out of a home with those abuses and those addictions, that was conditioned into me. And actually that led into my first marriage, which that ended very difficult. And put into me, well, I definitely don't want to repeat that. So what does it take for me to become better? Knowing and understanding everything is spiritual first and physical second, that means that I need to change so that I can be more in alignment with who I really am, my internal purposes, and then attract a companion and a partner that's also of equal connection with herself and her spiritual awarenesses, so that we can come together and form a fantastic relationship that continues to grow and flourish. Again, spiritually first and physically second. So yeah, my wife and I have now been married for 21 years. We still deal with egotistical and spiritual, and how to make that work and how to fit that together. And, we have a son with cerebral palsy, and we had him off of medications for 8 full years. He's 23 now. But for the last 6 years, we've been struggling again to figure out what's going to help him get to the next level. And where are we going? Spiritually first and physically second, so that we can change his life and help change our lives. And so we're still on this journey.
Love it. Love it. Love it, Shane. Love it so much. And you have not only the chiropractic experience, but you have a lot of business experience in a variety of businesses and companies. Let's talk about that just a little bit.
So as a serial entrepreneur, that's also obviously a built-in from a child, knowing and understanding that I was being prepared through the educational system to go to work for somebody else and to build someone else's dream. But that's not the American dream. The American dream is to be independent and have some freedom. But yet most people go into businesses and that becomes their job, because now they're supplying whatever service or product, but it ties them to the office or to their workplace. And I've seen entrepreneurs that have done that 60 to 80 to even 100 hours a week. And it's worse than being in a full-time job. They're actually having to go home and think about it. But I wanted to break that cycle as well, and have some grandfathers that have been involved in business. And so that's also kind of come through the generations as some of the gifts that I've had to develop as well. And finding the business model, both retail, wholesale, as well as network marketing and from person to person. But the biggest part of any business is getting excellent at knowing who you are, what your message is, and being able to then bring that to the market and have that be attractive. And even below that, let's say below that message, is your personal understanding of who you are and where you are going, what you are creating, spiritually first and physically second.
Wow, Shane. So what you just said, not everybody is going to get right away. So I'd like us to just delve just a little bit. You got to know who you are, what you're selling, and how to make it attractive. But the key is knowing who you are. Did I get that right?
Amen.
Knowing who you are. So it took you, that's really what this entire journey of your life is about, is finding out who you are, knowing that you weren't the abuse and the addiction. That wasn't something that wasn't you. It's so not really anyone. It's just how people end up sometimes as they.
It was an experience.
Yeah.
But I don't define it as who I am.
Beautiful. I love that. And can we talk a little bit more about your son? I personally know just a little bit about your son, and what you and your wife do is you care for this precious human being. Just really amazes me. It's very, very selfless. Will you talk just a little bit about what it is like to have a son or a child who requires the amount of care, and what blessings that's brought to you and your family?
That's an amazing journey in and of itself, and has actually added to my journey in understanding spirit first and physical second, because the ego is so tied into who we are and what we think is normal. And for most people in the American society, normal is having a 40-hour-a-week job, coming home, being able to relax, do whatever you want, pick up and go on a vacation weekend, or go on a break, those, go camping, whatever your activities are. when you have a child that has some, in our society, we call them disabilities, but that's a misnomer because they are so fantastic and they carry such an amazing influence. Again, it's that spiritual influence because they know who they are and they've just come with themselves manifest in a little different human frame and a human form than you and I, which also tells me that their challenges aren't the same as your and my challenges because we can think cognitively, we can get up and move. It's a different set of challenges. So that has been a personal journey for me to get to know who I am and literally have to release that normal life and understand that my normal is a different normal than most other people. But it doesn't matter what your normal is, it's different than everybody else. And so our son is now 23 years old. He requires 24/7 care. He's in a wheelchair, doesn't talk, but does use a communication device. He's so intelligent, he was knowing his numbers and his colors and left and right by the time he was 2 and 3 years old, and could tell us things about himself and about his body and what's going on. So he does answer yes and no questions, always has. But then we've had the computer technology and the development come out with communication devices. He goes out on the internet and he uses a 3D CAD program and creates 3D models and puts them on his Facebook page.
Wow.
He has created and programmed icons on his own computer system. He goes deeper into that computer programming than any of us. And I consider my wife and I to be pretty computer savvy because we can go in and I can set up internet and do most of the, IP address things. And so that comes pretty easy. And programming, I've taken programming classes. He's incredible with what he does with that computer and trying to figure that out and back it out. I'm like, what did you do? We have to send it back to the computer programmers to get it fixed typically if something goes wrong with that one. But yeah, it's kind of a journey. And then, with a journey of learning the medical model as well and being able to figure out how to help his body heal itself while balancing that with what we have going on politically, economically, and society in our medical system and the way the state and the medical system work together. And we don't own our children in this society. We manage them and they let us manage them and think that they're ours. But in reality, that's just a whole new can of worms. So we've had to be very careful with that as well. But overall, teaching him and using nutritional supplements, and he's doing a lot of studying now with my mentors and Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dr. Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden and Dr. Wayne Dyer and these great names of people that I've been studying. He is now studying them and finding he loves them. In fact, he's listening to their workshops and their seminars and their YouTube videos and audio books. And he's doing all of those kind of things literally every single day in his self-improvement and self-awareness. So I'm not going to be surprised if he has eventually one of those Christ-centered, spiritual-centered experiences where his body literally comes to a point of elevation and he steps up and he gets out of that chair. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that's part of his journey in our future.
Wow, Shane, that level of hope is just absolutely contagious in such a beautiful way. And I appreciate you sharing more. What is your son's name?
His name's Calvin. Thank you.
Calvin. That's I really appreciate hearing those things. And I love what you said about everybody's normal is different. And, somebody might look at, just being tied down to the care of this young man. And the way that you explained it, you see the blessings in it so clearly. And I love that. And I will look forward to the day. I will look forward to the day when Calvin stands up out of that wheelchair. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
And so you are extremely well studied, which is one of the reasons why I love talking to you so much, because you are pulling from all these great masters, all these things that you've read, and that really are the entire gamut of what we call personal development, or as you're calling it, the spirit first, the physical second. So can you name just a few of the nuggets that you've drawn the last, let's say, 2 years? Or if that's too constricting, if you've got 3 or 4 nuggets from a lifetime, that would be awesome.
So that's amazing. The journey actually really accelerated when Dr. Wayne Dyer did one of his PBS broadcasts and was talking about his book, The Power of Intention. That really set things off. But I'd obviously been studying John Maxwell and Anthony, Tony Robbins, and other business coaches and personal development coaches. But now it's developed more into the Dr. Wayne Dyer and Dr. Bruce Lipton and Dr. Joe Dispenza. And Dr. Joe Dispenza's books are absolutely mind-blowing for breaking the concepts, breaking the paradigms, our whole belief system. And that's really what's accelerated our learning and growth in the last year, has been diving into his information. I've actually listened to each of his audiobooks, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, You Are the Placebo, and Becoming Supernatural. I've listened to those a minimum of 6 times each, most of them a dozen times each, because it's so filled with information that each time it's just like soaking in deeper and becoming more alive in my experience and what's happening in the brainwave. And then how do we get into those different brainwave states? That's really the biggest part of his work. Another huge part of his work is making the mind connect with the heart. And when the heart and the mind are on equal frequencies and they're resonating together in their frequency on that sine wave and they come together, it's called coherence. And when that happens, the whole energy of the body and the aura literally explode in the energy field around us. So that's been part of the practice, and the application is learning how to do that and get into those deeper meditative states, surrendering to God's energy. And here's a key: the delta brainwave state in which we sleep. And most people know about the brainwaves that we go through in sleep. And delta brainwave is when we're in the deep restorative sleep pattern. That delta brainwave is also the same brainwave as a child from the age of 0 to 2 years old. Now, connect that then with the scriptures, and the scriptures say, become as a little child. It's all connected in that way. Because when you look and watch these little babies, these infants, they're in a brainwave state of such marvel, such exploration, such surrender to their outside world, connecting to the inside world. That is literally the deep delta brainwave state of a deep meditation as well. But now we're doing it consciously instead of unconsciously. Because a baby is doing it unconsciously. That's just where they're at. And then we lose that and go into the theta wave, which is the terrible twos, because that's the change when they go into less consciousness of who they really are, and they start to come into more physical consciousness, and they're coming out of their spiritual consciousness. So that's a transition. And then when we get to teenager, that's why that is so difficult, because we're going from an alpha brainwave state where we're daydreamy and we're still having a little bit of that unconscious or that spiritual consciousness kind of coming in, and it's easy still to kind of slip between those two states. But then we're transitioning into a beta brainwave state, which is our physical consciousness. And that is really, for most people, the most difficult one to start breaking through and getting back into those other brainwave states. But that's really where the work begins for all of us. And when we're doing this, that's really what I realize is going on my chiropractic table, is people are closing their eyes. They're getting into a little bit of an alpha brainwave state, going into that relaxed state in their physical body, I'm working with acupuncture points and adjusting points, and now getting their energies to start flowing and functioning. And that's really the magic then of how the chiropractic is working into this as well, how I'm working with somebody physically and then teaching and helping them understand what we're doing in using those points, literally reconditioning and reprogramming the brain, setting up new connections and new awarenesses in the physical body, and making those connections and awarenesses now stick more and more as we go through their care plans. And as they consciously understand that in their awareness and can work on that in between the adjustments, and then we reset it and reestablish it during an adjustment. And that's the conditioning I realized that I've been going through myself, going through the whole transition from the abusive conditioning and then coming into the awareness and the consciousness of, wow, that's my old state and that's not who I really am, and being able to change that. So this is what I help people walk through emotionally and mentally as well.
Wow. I was just imagining myself on a chiropractic table and me thinking, oh, I'm just getting my cracked and getting back aligned. But all of these things that you just described, one, I think sets you just apart in all the things that you're bringing together to the table to your patients. And now with your other business, in addition to that, with helping people in the network marketing industry, all of this knowledge all coming together. It's really amazing. And my friends, you can find out all about Shane in the links in the description. He's got a lot of things, including a 10% discount on supplements, and even a short consultation with him. And I think that I'm probably going to book one myself, Shane, just saying.
Let's do that.
You blow my mind all the time when we talk, but you've really been a superstar today in explaining just in this short time. If you had one piece of wisdom that you could share before we go today, what would it be?
The beginning point for everyone is beginning to understand the egotistical body, the pain body, and then realizing who you are as an intelligent spirit body. In chiropractic, we call it the innate intelligence. In acupuncture, they call it chi energy. Chi energy is spiritual energy. And getting that energy to flow. When there are blockages in that energy, that's what causes pain physically. And emotionally, mentally, that's what causes the block. So becoming more aware, and that's really one of the first places to begin, is just recognizing. The second is applying the universal unconditional love that you really, really are, because that's who you are in spirit and in nature, is unconditional love. It's the ego that's been trained and conditioned out of that unconditional love. When we begin understanding who we really are and applying that love, that there's no reason for guilt. In fact, when you find guilt, it means that you've stepped into the ego again. That's the barometer that the ego is meant to be and supposed to be. And that's really the magical piece that I think that I found just within the last 3 months, is that is the role the ego plays, is to let me know when I'm outside of my spiritual intelligence and who I really am. And the ego lets me know that, because then I'm pain, I'm unhappy, I'm judgmental, I'm not unconditional love. And the farther I am away from that means the farther I've stepped into ego. So I hope that really helps people understand and start recognizing the difference in who you really are versus who your identity and ego has set your physical world up to be, and what you've been thinking you are, but you're not.
Shane, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. I encourage you to watch this again, because there were so many golden nuggets that Shane left for us in this 20 minutes that we've been together. So again, you can contact Shane in all of the links in the description. And thank you, Shane. Appreciate you being here so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.